Welcome to Football Discussion Daily. My name is Joe, and I'm here with the co-host
CGO.
CGO or George. Quick reminder: please like us, subscribe us. We release every single day on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and other platforms. Just in the news, in the day after English Premier League closed, we have rumors that Andy Robertson could go to Juventus or Spurs. Last summer, there was also rumors about Atletico Madrid. I have not heard that this summer, but Juventus is now appearing to be a contender there. You have Benfica is attempting to hire Marco Silva from Fulham. He's been at Fulham, I think, 4 years. I think he got him promoted. If he joined Fulham in the Championship a couple years ago, got them promoted, and has had three fairly uneventful seasons in the Premier League, but uneventful for a set club like Fulham is a big win for them. You also have rumors that AC Milan is trying to hire Andoni Areola. That would be, in my opinion, huge for them. Areola has been fantastic, and I think he could really do a lot with AC Milan. It doesn't sound like there will be any openings in the Premier League for him. And, of course, Nuno Espirito Santo. There's rumors that he is going to leave West Ham after they get relegated, which is interesting because he actually came to England, his first club. He left a Portuguese team, I think it was Porto 10 years ago, to be in the Championship. So he has coached in the Championship before. Last time he was there, he set the world record for points with Wolves. That was 10 years ago. So very interesting decision by him and the club to part ways there. George, let's start with Nuno Espirito Santo. How much blame do you place for him for West Ham's relegation this season? I looked. I thought it was later in the season. He joined September.
He joined September, so the league started in August, and then he joined September when Graham Potter, I think in their first 5 games in the Premier League, they lost 4 games. So I think based on that, Graham Potter was asked to leave. And then September was when Nuno Espirito Santo took over the team. So I think he had time to ensure the team didn't get relegated. But unfortunately, West Ham got relegated. They only got 10 Premier League wins out of 38. So when you look at the win rate, that's a very poor one. And if you consider, he signed a 3-year contract with the club, but when you look at the finance aspect of West Ham, the fact that they'll be going to a lower division, that is the Championship, what it means is that West Ham may not be able to maintain their financial obligation towards the coach and most of the players. So, and there are rumors that players like Jarrod Bowen would likely leave the club. Somersville, players like that, most of them will most likely leave because they have to balance their books so that they don't run into trouble. Because we know a team like Leicester had similar issue when they were relegated, but they didn't take some very drastic measures in the aspect of finance. But you notice later it came back to haunt them. They suffered the point deduction, and apart from that, they got relegated to a much lower division. So I think West Ham is trying to take all precautions so that they don't get into that same mess that Leicester City got into.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. West Ham also have one of the biggest stadiums I think the biggest stadium in the Championship by far, one of the biggest stadiums in the Premier League, if not the biggest. My understanding is that this is not. It has cost a lot of money to maintain this big stadium. If they don't have the large crowds that the Premier League brings, that is going to be more of a burden than it is a benefit. Even if they didn't have to purchase the stadium, it was basically gifted to them after the 2012 Olympics. So that's an interesting nuance there too. They have not gone down since the 2012 Olympics. The last season down, I think, was 2011, 2012. If I remember right.
40 years is so they're going back after 40 years.
So financially, they have that, which has been which will be really interesting to see how they handle in the Championship. I don't think anybody expected Jarrod Bowen to stay. He's 29, and he obviously has the talent to play in the Premier League. And they have a couple other players like Somerville, who again has talent to play in the Premier League, but they have a lot of players that will stay. And but I don't blame that much. I think that he struggled. I think any manager would have struggled in this situation. And this West Ham team is, they're better than any of the 6 relegated teams the last 2 years. They have one of the better records, and it's just a shame that there's so many strong teams in the league this year.
There are speculations that the former coach of Burnley, Scott Parker, might be one of those that might be considered to take over West Ham. Scott Parker always does well whenever he's in the championship. We know how many teams he has been able to help to get promotion. So I think he's an expert when it comes to helping teams get promoted. But the problem is when it comes to the Premier League, most times Scott Parker, I haven't really seen much from him when it comes to replicating what we see him do with teams in the championship. So that's still speculations for now.
Yep. Yeah. It'll be interesting. Again, they have such a big makeover to happen this summer, and they have not been down in 14 years. George, let's move on to Benfica, who have approached Marco Silva, who is, I think he got hired by Fulham in 4 or 5 years ago. Summer 2022, first season in the championship. They get promoted. They do very well in the championship. I think Mitrovic sets the record for goals. And then he has 3-4 uneventful seasons in the Premier League. I think they've gotten like 10th, 12th, 15th, somewhere in there. Never in danger of relegation. Never really fighting for Europe. For a club Fulham size, that's pretty good. A lot of times I felt this year, their results later in the season, once they're guaranteed safety, have dwindled a bit. I feel like Marco Silva is very much like, I've done my job, let's get out of here. I think he's a fantastic coach. He's good enough. He's been at Watford. He's been at Everton. Again, he did fine. Not amazing, not poor. He's coached in the Champions League in Greece, I think it was. I think at Panathinaikos or Olympiacos, one of those clubs. He was in Greece. He coached in Europe. So Benfica has approached him. Do you feel like he is ready to make the jump? And do you feel like Fulham will be fine without him?
Oh, Marco Silva, for me, is just, I think if you look at coaches that you can't just say they are just maybe a little bit above average, Marco Silva is one of those coaches. Because one way or the other, you won't really blame the coach that much when you don't see the team is handling, maybe competing to find themselves in Europe, like in the Premier League, because of maybe the squad depth, the quality of players he has at Fulham. But if you look at the Fulham players, they are not, they are okay. I feel Fulham has the potential to even finish in a European sport. But I don't know. I think maybe the club is not that too ambitious because a club that is very ambitious, if you don't give them what they want, like maybe finishing in the the Conference League at least, such a club might ask you to leave. So I feel they are okay with what Marco Silva is doing with the team. And then looking at Benfica will be playing in the Europa League. I will remember Jose Mourinho was the person who was in charge of the team, and he was able to help the team to finish third place. In fact, Benfica did not lose any game in the Portuguese league. So they finished the league without losing any game. But sadly, because of too much draws they had, that made them finish third place in the Portuguese league, which means they'll be playing in the Europa League. So if they are able to get Marco Silva, what it means that Marco Silva will have to deal with competing in the Portuguese league and also competing in the Europa League. Benfica has good record when it comes to the Europa League, even though I can't remember if they won it. I think they've been to the final. Is it two or
Either way,
once? I know there was a time they played Chelsea in the final, and Chelsea defeated them in the final of the Europa League. You wanted to say something?
It'll be very different stylistically for Marco Silva. Like except for his last season in the championship with Fulham, he's gonna be at a team that's expected to win every week. When at Fulham, like they're pretty cool. You get 45 points every year. Like we don't really care. And And I don't know if that's from lack of ambition or more of just I think that their owners are very realistic about what their ceiling is as a club. But Marco Silva, again, getting 45 points and checking out is not something that's going to be cool at Benfica. They expect to at least compete for the Portuguese title every year. They expect to make a run. They expect to have, most years these Portuguese teams will sell a couple players to larger teams. They expect those guys to be developed as in a shop window. That's one of the Benfica and Sporting and Porto's biggest sells as recruiting. So that's going to be an expectation of Silva and the level it wasn't at Fulham, Watford. I didn't realize he was manager of Hull for a little bit. And so I think it'll be a very different challenge for him. And I think 5 years is forever in this sport. He's been at Fulham for 5 years. I'm looking at it right now, so I think it makes sense for him. And I think Benfica is definitely a step up with Fulham, even if they're relatively around the same budget. So good for him if he gets that.
So I think Fulham finished with 52 points, and then they finished on the second half of the table. So if we look at it, I won't say that's a very good one. If a team like Sunderland that got promoted to the Premier League can finish in seventh position, that means we should expect much from Fulham team being tutored by Marco Silva.
Well,
so
historically, Sunderland is a much bigger club than Fulham, and so they have the bigger fan base. I don't know their particular revenue this year or last year, but my guess is historically, if they're both in the full Premier League, getting the same spots for year over year over year, Sunderland will have a higher revenue than Fulham eventually, just because of the larger fan base. And so Fulham also has to compete with Chelsea is less than a mile away, Brentford's 3 miles away. There's just a lot more competition for Fulham with them. So I do think that there's differences between Sunderland and Fulham. I think that Fulham, again, they did get to I think it was a Europa League final 15, 16 years ago. They lost, I think, to Juventus, if that was right. It was 2008 or 9, correct me if I'm wrong. But, I do feel like it's very different in terms of the club. Sunderland have won the league in the past in their history, and Fulham have not. So very different, very club situations there, George.
I expected much from Fulham, especially in the first stanza of the league. It was looking as if they are that team that would compete. But as times goes on, we realize they couldn't really maintain the momentum, because we saw the way they were able to give some big teams a very good run for their money. But at the end of the day, they are very inconsistent. And that's one of the things I've observed with the Fulham team under Marco Silva. So maybe the Portuguese league might be a much better league for him to thrive more, especially when it comes to winning title, because with a Fulham team, I don't see him winning any major title there. That would be very, very difficult. So maybe if he goes back to Benfica, that will give him the opportunity and the platform to win something like a title, and possibly a big club might really come for him. I feel he has the potential to handle a big club if the opportunity comes. But for you to handle a big club, you have to convince them with something very positive. So that's one thing he has not been able to do.
He's quite young, 48, given how long his managerial career is. And so 48, I mean, he still has a dozen years, so we'll see. Andy Robertson, there's rumors last year about Atletico Madrid. There's rumors right now. Spurs has always been in the mix. Now that they're guaranteed safety, I'm sure that they will try to get him. Juventus now is rumored in the mix for Andy Robertson, one of the most sought-after free agents. I think he brings great leadership, and as long as it's only once a week, not twice a week, I feel like he'd be a great addition to any team. George, where do you think he ultimately ends up? What's best for him?
I think if he goes to Juve, that might be a much easier place for him to thrive. That's what I feel, because the English Premiership is a very, very much competitive league compared to when you talk about the Italian Scudetto. So they are not at the same rank. And if you consider his age, Robertson is 32, so he's not a young person. So what it shows is that it will thrive more where we have less intensity. That is a league with less intensity compared to the Premier League. The Premier League is of high intensity. And if you look at this season, Robertson did not really play most of Liverpool's game in the Premier League. He played 24 games in the Premier League. That's a Robertson that a season before then he played 33 games. So he only missed 5 Premier League games. That is in 2024-2025 season. But this season, you notice that Arne Slot didn't really have much trust where Andy Robertson is. And if you look at it, you notice that Calkes got more playing time than Andy Robertson.
I watched a lot, and I'll say this: like Kirkes, he's just not as disciplined or as smart of a player. He made dumb fouls a lot. He was too aggressive. Like I do feel like there's kinks in Kirkes' game that if he ironed out, because he's younger, would be better than Robertson now. But Robertson, I watched him play. He was great. He doesn't have the legs he had 10 years ago, but like I feel like he has something to give in this league. There's several fullback. Fullback is one of the easier positions physically to play late in your career. Like you have guys like Ashley Young, who I think played until he's like 38 or 39. You have other players who are able to play, in their mid 30s. Robertson hasn't had a major injury, like a torn ACL that again is a career killer in your mid 30s. He's 32. He's not 38. I think he'd be great on a team like Tottenham, who need that leadership. I've shared with you. I think that Chelsea, that's the type of leadership they need. I don't think Robertson's the right fit in Chelsea in particular, but I feel like there's a lot of any team can and should kill for Robertson. What he's not capable of is playing twice a week on a team competing on 4 different fronts, which is what Liverpool needs from the position, and that's why they're letting him go, because Kirkes should be that.
Yeah. Because if you look at Roberto De Zerbi, he always demands so much from his players. That's the kind of manager he is, and there's always that high intensity when you play for Roberto De Zerbi. So my concern is, will Andy Robertson be able to fit into what Roberto De Zerbi wants to do? That's one thing I would like you to respond to.
I do. I mean, again, George, in my opinion, a player's body, like, again, as an older guy myself who still competes pretty high level, it's not like the peak performance doesn't drop. What drops is the ability to maintain peak performance, again, for 9 months straight, twice a week. Like, I feel like Robertson can absolutely play. Tottenham should only be in one competition next year. They didn't qualify for Europe. Andy Robertson probably won't be expected to play cups. If he goes to Tottenham, I do feel like Andy Robertson can keep that up for 30, 35 games a year, which is what he would be expected there. Again, I feel like the difference between a 28-year-old Robertson and 32 is that at Liverpool, he'd need to do that for 60 to 65 games, which I don't feel like he's capable of anymore. And again, at 35 games, which is the expectation at Tottenham, I do. That's basically 60% of the games. So
do you think that means he's going to bench players like Destiny Udogie, who plays the left back for Tottenham? And then I think Spence also plays that position as well. You think these are players that Andy Robertson will put on the bench when he gets to Tottenham?
I mean, I feel like they need a leader on their back line. I think Robertson has shown he's fully capable of playing center back too in a pinch. Depends on the formation about Spence and Udogie. It depends on a lot of things. Again, he brings leadership and experience in the back line. You saw, Kyle Walker at Burnley the past couple of years. That last year, I guess, that I think that he helped out with, and I think Robertson is probably better at this stage in his career than Kyle Walker was when he signed at Burnley. So we'll see, George. I think it'll be good for them. So, George, let's close out with our standard questions of number 1, where do you see Robertson ending up next year? Is it Juventus? Is it Spurs? Is it somewhere else? Number 2, do you see Marco Silva leaving Fulham and going to Benfica? Do you feel like he'd be more successful there? Who do you see Fulham bringing in? Number 3, And number 3, Nuno Esperanto Santos leaving West Ham. Do you think he is at fault for West Ham's relegation? If not, who do you think is at fault? What do you think is next for Nuno Esperanto Santos? And who is next for West Ham? Let us know your thoughts. Thank you for listening.